Treasure Island Secrets of the Mediterranean. A damp New York night street. Antique matchmaker De Niro is walking down a dark night street. De Niro is busily heading for somewhere. Arriving at the cafe's pay phone box, De Niro calls someone. Matthew, I've got some important information. This time it's a big one for sure. There is a shipwreck with gold bars buried in the waters near the Greek island of Capolonia. What do you think? I'll prepare everything you need. Give me an answer by tomorrow. The treasure hunter Matthew is lost in thought that night. The next day, Matthew tells the treasure hunter Leonardo. Leonardo decides to do it right away without a second thought. What do you need to worry about? The information De Niro got? Of course I will. Exploration expert Harrelson was very sensitive to this information. However, Harrelson showed a positive response. Okay, I'll look into the expedition, Matthew said with a smile. Thank you, Harrelson. The next day, the treasure hunter Leonardo checked the area where the shipwreck had sunk. That's not going to be easy, Leonardo said in his heart. A few days later, Leonardo and Matthew met again at a cafe on the island of Capolonia. I'm getting people together now, Leonardo said. Then Matthew laughed and said, I'm ready, too. Donald, who owns a number of wires, says, I have everything. I'll lend you the ship and the equipment I have that day. Brandon, a buyer of antiques, was cynical. Really? Well, where did you get this information? Well, Matthew, you've got a big deal again. Anyway, okay, get in touch. Walken, an underwater excavator, said, Matthew crazy. Where? Capolonia? Walken cursed, but he was expressing a deep interest. Walken said, I'm going to go and do it. Oh no, exploration expert Charlie said, is Walken coming, too? If Walken does, I'll go. What do you have to worry about, don't you think? Charlie laughed. Hoffman was at the antique auction house. I hear you. I see, I'll contact you when the time is right. Don't contact me for a while. Hoffman looked around. Then he whispered, there are wolves all around me. Let's talk about the important thing in Darrow's room, Hoffman said, his eyes flashing. Antique matchmaker Samuel Jackson looked puzzled. In particular, he was interested in the words that there would be large amounts of ancient wine bottles and jars buried in the shipwreck. He looked as if he could never pass. Danielle, an underwater exploration specialist, looked rotten and said, Matthew's business? Matthew, that baby almost killed me. That's enough. I won't do it. Kevin, a video expert, said, it's been a long time since I went out to sea. I'm so frustrated to be in the mountains. I have to do something. Don't you think so? Something will come out if I dig in. At Matthew's suggestion, Chopin was cold-hearted and pessimistic. Listen, it's really deep underwater. It's going to be really hard to get it out, even if it does. There's a 300% chance you'll get caught by the Coast Guard while you're taking it out. What's the point of doing that? Gemma, who secretly trades in a number of antiques and paintings, has also decided to take part in this business. A level-headed Gemma began to take a meticulous grasp of the business's proposals. The same was true of the black market expert Olson and his wife. Let's tidy up when we get caught doing it. I think there's a lot of antiques buried in the ship. That's not the problem, Olson said coolly. Graham, who runs a small antique shop in Italy, listened quietly and said, well, say pigs. Matthew stayed up all night that night planning a shipwreck excavation project. Matthew's last chance at life was this covert and thoroughly planned project. Matthew was excited. I wondered what would be inside the ship that sank 3,000 years ago in the depths of the sea. A day before the excavation, Matthew assigned each member their own role. Finally, everything was ready. The next day, the island of Capolonia was calm. People and children were playing on the beach. On the island of Capolonia, a ship was crossing the Mediterranean Sea. They were Matthew and the treasure hunters. Everyone was full of excitement and anticipation for this treasure hunt. Soon, the expedition began. The hunters went deep into the sea. The hunters carefully began to go deep into the deep sea. Then, an old ship began to appear. It was obscured by dark sand and seawater. Then a huge amphora began to be seen around the ship. The hunters were surprised. Walken tried to get inside the ship's hull. Black currents and dust obscured the view. After going deep for a long time, some faint object began to appear. It was the gold bullion box that hunters were looking for. Inside the open box were piles of coins used by ancient sailors. At that time, a strange signal was detected at the Korea Coast Guard base station. The Maritime Police Station confirmed that suspicious signals were caught deep in the deep sea. Jordan, head of the Korea Coast Guard, sensed that someone was in the deep sea. He sensed that they must be treasure hunters. Then, a huge ancient statue was visible to the hunter's eyes. It was a beautiful and mysterious statue. Then, an urgent signal was heard on the sea. It's the Maritime Police. Walken and Daniel began to climb above the deep sea. Leonardo the treasure hunter began to run away from the Coast Guard. The next day, Harrelson was questioned by the police. The Coast Guard began to question carefully. Harrelson denied everything the police asked. He called it a bio-business that detected the deep sea. Jonathan, a treasure hunter-gatherer detective, did not believe what Harrelson said. However, due to the lack of evidence, he said to Harrelson, "This is the last one. I will have to make sure that I never get caught again." Meanwhile, Matthew was admitted to the hospital to avoid doubts from detectives. A few days later, Matthew gets a phone call from Leonardo. "What's going on?" Then Leonardo, a treasure hunter, says, "I've got some important information." "Big deal. How about it?" Matthew hesitates for a while and replies, "Of course, we always succeed. We're now drinking a 3,000-year-old wine that was pulled out of the sea." "Isn't that great?" Matthew laughed.